One of my earliest memories is of going to see the AIDS quilt with my family. I grew up in a theater family. My parents were both actors, directors, producers, techies. They did it all. Locally, regionally. We even went to Vegas and performed as a family a few times. We sang in four-part harmony. It was kind of obnoxious. However, from the time I was still in diapers, I grew up on stage, backstage, above the stage, and in the audience of many a rehearsal and show. When I was about 3 years old, my father was in a production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, one of my favorite musicals. That cast was incredible. Even as a 3-year-old, I remember how talented and gifted that cast was, especially the man who played Joseph. Christopher John was a young, charismatic, kind, and very charming young man. Christopher had a smile like sunshine, warm, inviting, and beautiful, just like his voice. Christopher was slated to finish Joseph and immediately start a run of Jesus Christ Superstar before his appearance on Star Search. Now, for the young folk in the audience, Star Search was a show in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. It was a big deal with Ed McMahon. Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Aaliyah, those folks appeared on Star Search. And Christopher was going to have a shot. But he died after the run of Joseph and before Superstar. Christopher never made it to Star Search. Sometime later, my parents told me they were taking me to see a quilt. They explained to me that this quilt was the biggest quilt that I would probably ever see in my life. They explained to me what each square on the quilt represented. My parents told me what HIV and AIDS were, and that it was a disease that many people thought only affected queer people, and that was untrue. They told me that Christopher would have a square on the quilt. I didn't know Christopher had died. I was still so young. My parents were shocked. No one in the cast knew that Christopher was sick. He kept it from everybody. I don't know if Christopher was alone, if he had a partner. I don't know what his last days were like in the short month between the end of Joseph and the beginning of Superstar. All I know is that I felt very sad that he was dead. And I felt very happy to know that someone had taken the time to create a panel for Christopher. That he had someone in his life who loved and cared for him enough to memorialize him in the biggest piece of folk art that I will have ever seen, I'm sure. If only stigma didn't get in the way of saving lives. If only folks felt safe enough to share, maybe we wouldn't have so many losses. And while the quilt is a beautiful tribute, heartbreaking, excellent, all of these adjectives to describe this beautiful creation of love, interweaving folks' stories next to each other, Christopher's name next to someone else that he may or may not have known, a tribute of love, and showing that we are all interconnected by more than our humanity. If only we would talk about these things. And I don't regret knowing these at such a young age. I'm forever grateful for being raised on stage and having the experiences that I've had in my life with my parents. But if only I didn't have to know that.